Next right of reply, the honourable member for Foothills.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I want to thank all of my colleagues in this House who have spoken in support of my private member's bill, which is amending the Health of Animals Act to protect the biosecurity on farms. Now, many of the questions that have been raised in the speeches tonight, and certainly I've heard it online, is that there haven't been occasions where diseases have been spread as a result of protesters. And that just simply isn't the case. There was an outbreak of rotavirus in Quebec when protesters were found on hog operations in Saint-Nazaire, Quebec. Mink farms in Ontario had an outbreak of canine distemper when protesters were on mink farms in Ontario. So this is happening. And we can't allow this type of activity to continue if we want to protect the biosecurity, not only on farms, but certainly our food security across Canada and around the world. This came about as from an instance that happened in my riding, and I know I've spoken about this in this House previously. When I received a call from farmers near Fort Macleod where they woke up in the morning to check on their free-range turkey farm to have 40 protesters in the barn trying to take their animals. The stress that this put under the Shedder family is incredible and still goes on today. And we've heard that from farmers across Canada who have had instances where protesters have been on their farms. They question, why me? What did I do to attract this sort of activity? And I had many calls from farmers across Canada who were saying, like, is this open season on farmers? Are we not even safe on our own property? So there's the mental health aspect that this impacts on our farmers, but also the financial risk that this puts not only to our agriculture industry, but certainly consumers across the country. We are seeing this take place right now across Canada, but certainly in the Fraser Valley and across the prairies with the outbreak of avian flu. And I know my colleagues have talked about the mental health impact this has on farmers when they're worried about protesters, but we're also dealing with euthanizing thousands and thousands of animals. BC chicken farmers are having to euthanize complete barns of their animals. This is happening across the Western Canada and some parts of Central Canada and Eastern Canada. I can't even understate the impact that this has on these farm families who do everything they possibly can to take care of these animals and follow very strict biosecurity protocols to protect their operations. You can't imagine how difficult it is to ask for CFIA to come in when you have a positive test of avian flu and tell that farmer that he has to put down all of his animals, that he's worked so hard to raise from the chick to adulthood. It would be similar if we had an outbreak of African swine fever. The pork industry has said an outbreak of African swine fever would be a $48 billion impact on that industry, as it would wipe out the hog industry in Canada. We've seen it in China, where they've had to euthanize more than 1 million animals as a result of African swine fever in China. We have very strict biosecurity protocols in place for these very reasons. And unfortunately, these protesters who come onto private property, in many cases just don't understand the consequences of them going from farm to farm, operation to operation, and possibly spreading those viruses and animal-borne diseases from one farm to the next. And the consequences of that activity could be disastrous on a scale that we've never seen before in Canada. And I certainly don't want to see another outbreak of something similar that we had with BSE, be that African swine fever, foot and mouth disease, and we're already seeing the implications of avian flu. The other question we've had, Madam Speaker, is this is the ag-gag bill. That simply is not the case, and I can't stress this enough. This does not stop protesters from protesting on public land outside of the farm. And it certainly does not stop whistleblowers or employees on the farm from reporting issues that they see that are not up to standard. In fact, those employees and the farm families themselves have a moral and legal obligation to report any poor activity that does not meet our standards. So, Madam Speaker, I want to thank all of my colleagues in this House for supporting this legislation, supporting our farm families, and supporting our agriculture industry, and I look forward to discussing this further at committee. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.